Hey there, humans of healthcare. Hey, there's a guy named Doug Dippel, who's the CEO of Rolling Plains Memorial Hospital in Sweetwater, Texas. Sweetwater is about 40 miles to the west of Abilene, Texas. It's considered West Texas. It's in the plains. And this CEO is born in Lubbock. He's a former CNO, so he came up through the nursing ranks. His wife is from a little town called Roscoe, which isn't far from Sweetwater. And between he and his wife, they've got family lineage that goes back for generations. And it's a long list of people who have had all sorts of involvement with the community over many, many years. And throughout my travels throughout the United States, I haven't run into many CEOs who have made it back home to run their hospitals. And so it feels like a treasure, especially when you know Doug. I've known Doug for about 15 years. And at the core of my success, you can always trace it back to Doug. Doug Dippel's a guy that believes in engagement. He's truly about relationships. He believes that he can inspire people to provide their best to the patients. And so when you think about nurses who are on the front lines of providing healthcare, wouldn't you want them to be supported or feel supported and feel good about where they're working and the leader that's supporting them? I think it's imperative. And that's the difference between Rolling Plains and other hospitals is you have somebody who's hyper-focused on making sure you as staff are properly engaged and have all the support and love and encouragement that you need to do your job to the best of your abilities. Doug states in his interview that he's very proud and he believes that the community is growing prouder of the hospital, but he wants it to become a treasure to the community. And in my travels, just to kind of reiterate what it means to have a hospital, we're finding that a lot of hospitals are closing. So the communities don't even have access to healthcare within many miles and hours away. So it's one thing to have a hospital, but Doug doesn't want to stop there. He aspires to, and he's well on his way to creating a healthcare environment, leading a healthcare environment, leading a hospital to make the community feel like it's a treasure. And I can't think of a better person long term to do it the right way. And the stories that Doug tells about his journey in this interview, I think you'll find that there is a movement. It's a feeling. There's some data points that are kind of showing themselves that are substantiate that feeling. But more than anything, it's what is Doug's goal? What is his leadership style? And this effort to get to the patient, for all the effort to be centered around the patient. I hope you enjoy this interview. There's a lot more to come. And thank you, Doug. You've always been there for me. This is the least that I can do for you. I can't wait to do more. This is going to be fun. What's it like, being a CEO of a small hospital and having the responsibilities that you have without really a safety net? Do you feel like you have a safety net around you, or does it feel like you're kind of out here and you have to figure out how to survive?
That's an interesting question. I feel like I have a safety net in the relationships that I'm building.
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's a financial safety net for the hospital.
Right.
This is a very tight-knit community, and the vast majority of people in this community are very proud to have a hospital like this in their community. So there's a safety net there, but it does draw on taxpayer dollars, which means that it's going to be under scrutiny pretty easily as well. I think as long as you have that trust factor there with the community that you're using the taxpayer dollars wisely and for community interests and that sort of thing, then there is a safety net in the community, but it's pretty delicate. Safety net. But the things that are the people that I've entrusted to build what I see as the vision that I'm trying to build here, they automatically become my safety net at the hospital. And and I'm in a kind of unique position, is that I'm not really from here, but I'm from here. So I married a girl that grew up in Roscoe, Texas, 7 miles west of here. So kind of deep family ties there, and I can pretty quickly use her maiden name or her mom's maiden name and there's deep roots in the community. But what's interesting is that my grandfather grew up here. You know, he had a hand in actually putting together the Einadale Gin, from my understanding. His sister married a man from here, so that's a whole nother lineage of roots, the Etheridges, that I have ties to this community. So on both sides of my wife's family and my family, we kind of have deep roots, and I can get into some pretty interesting conversations with some people if they think I'm completely a foreigner to the area or the outsider that came in. I'm not, because I have the same family ties that a lot of them have. So
for sure.
That's a little bit of a safety net that I have. So
I love that. That's a great point. I was thinking that when I asked that question. I mean, I've worked in Eastern Oklahoma. That's where I cut my teeth in healthcare, was talking to rural hospitals, right? And I'd heard that you could live in a community for 25 years, but if you weren't born there, you still weren't from there.
Right.
You know, and I think that's real. You know, there's something to the community lines and, you know, what they consider being from someplace.
Right.
I've experienced that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then West Texas, you know, you've been here long enough to know a little bit of West Texas.
Yeah.
Just being able to say from your West Texas gives you some community ties too. And I was born in Lubbock and have been in West Texas more of my life than I haven't been. So there's a tie there that I get the land, I get the people, I get the industry, ranching, oil, wind, all of that.
How's that help you in your job?
Well, you have some idea of who's coming to the hospital. You have an idea of the work ethic of the community, of the people, and they want to see that in you. I don't know that we've capitalized on how that helps me in my job yet. You know, I came here as the chief nursing officer in 2018. We quickly got into the pandemic. It really hit in March of 2020, and I took over the job from the previous CEO in July of 2020, so right in the throes of the pandemic. Yeah. So knowing the community didn't necessarily help me that much for the first 2 years of the job. My job was to get gowns and gloves and hold it together, and, you know, try to keep your staff huddled together as a team. And so many hospitals suffered from, you know, nurses flying off to the East Coast to go make $200 an hour and that sort of thing. So, but, you know, now that we're out of the pandemic and people are getting to experience who I am, and I'm getting to experience the community and interacting in the community, then I think it helps me to have roots here. Like I said, it's being able to have a conversation with somebody and have some sort of equal ties of, you know, this person, I know this person, you know. Yeah. You know, you didn't realize it, but our great grandparents. Right. So it gives me, you know, probably being married to somebody from the community probably helps me more than anything, but also having some of my own family history in the area. I just it helps me connect, whether people know or don't know that I have those ties. I know something about them. Yeah.
Well, so I'm curious. I've known you for a long time, and I've never asked this question, but what does leadership mean to you, and how important is it to you as you take this journey?
I enjoy leadership, and I think my journey is incredibly unique. And I guess I almost have to go back a little bit to that question.
Yeah, tell your story.
You know, I went to Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas, and, you know, the goal, you know, my dad was kind of a child of the Depression, and what he wanted for his kids is to get a college degree. It doesn't matter what ends, just you got to get that college degree. And I accomplished that without really ever thinking of what I wanted to do. You know, had a very fun college life, joined a fraternity. I had a really strong work ethic at the same time, so I was able to make money however I wanted to make money to pay for whatever lifestyle I wanted, you know. So school was definitely part of the goal, but, you know, the lifestyle, the work ethic of being a college student was pretty unique to me. And anyway, I got a bartending job, and this is what kind of defined my nature. Within months, the bartending job became the head bartending job, became the assistant manager job, became the manager, then general manager. Next thing you know, we built in Lubbock. It's not really a thing now. You may have remembered it, the Depot District. Yeah. You know, all of that, I don't want to say it was all my idea, but I was able to work with the owner of what was then the Depot restaurant, and because things were growing a lot because of what I had committed to the place. You know, as a bartender, the beer garden at the Depot used to run about $1,200 a night on a good night. And so one winter, me and some of my friends redid the beer garden, to where it wasn't just one bar, it was 10 bars.
Wow.
And the first night that we opened, we rang $12,000 on the registers. I mean, it's kind of my nature to work and enjoy work and make things better. And when I got married and realized that I really didn't want to be in the restaurant and bar business of all my life, decided to get re-educated, and a lot of things pointed me towards nursing, unconventional compared to most people that go into nursing because they have this calling to take care of people. I wanted something stable that nobody could ever pin me down again. And I really found that in nursing because with just a little bit of extra training on your core base, you can be any kind of nurse you want. You can do it for 3 years and you want to do something else. And I've done emergency nursing and ICU nursing, but it really kind of lit a fire under me with my first management job. I went to UMC in Lubbock as a contract nurse. I was going to work for 3 months and come back here to Sweetwater. Me and my wife had bought a little lake house, and we were going to build a bigger house on that lake property. And that was my goal for going to do one contract in Lubbock. And one contract turned into 3, which turned into assistant manager, which turned into manager, director, division director, and vice president, all in about the scope of, I guess it was by 2006 or 7 that I was a vice president. So from 2000, it took me about 4 years of really rapid progression.
Wow. What do you think helped you move up so quickly?
I joke about that.
Yeah.
Some of it was I moved up so quickly before people got to know me. That's the joke part of it. But I think I've just really always taken care of my people. When I went to UMC, it was a night position in a medical ICU, which I worked alongside with about 10 other contract nurses and about 12 or 13 foreign nurses, Filipino nurses. And that's because this department, this leadership style, was not able to keep their staff. It was not a fun place to work. But at night, making the money of a contract nurse versus, a full-time nurse, the money was good. And I was having a blast because I was there at night. I wasn't under any of the strain of that management. And there was the contract nurses who kind of did their thing. And I actually gravitated towards the foreign nurses because we worked hard and had fun.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
And the whole time I was there, this position for an assistant manager for the nights was open. And I went home and talked to my wife about it. And I said, I got this crazy idea of taking this management job. It would be more than a 50% cut in pay, but I just got a feeling I can do it.
Wow.
And I mean, within months, we had a full staff. All of the Filipino nurses stayed. We had hired enough people that all the contract labor was out, which is what the hospital was looking for.
Sure.
And, all I can tell you that we did every night was we had fun. Yeah. I worked alongside of them. We had fun. We took great care of patients. I had several encounters. There was a patient there that, she had a lot of comorbidities and she would be admitted fairly regularly. Yeah. And it didn't matter what floor she was admitted to or whatever. She wanted me to come start her IV.
Oh, yeah.
So, but the whole team was that way. That's how we treated our patients. That's how we treated each other. We ate really good every night. And as an assistant manager, me and the director got invited down to the CEO's office. And he had a pretty simple question. What did y'all do to get rid of all these agency nurses?
Right.
And, my director had said, can you kind of put it on paper what you did? And it was a 1-pager. And at the end of the day, at the bottom, I put we had fun. Yeah. And we were proud of, it wasn't just fun. We were proud of what we were putting out. Yeah. We were taking really, really good care of these patients. It was a teaching organization. So most of the people there were at night were student residents that liked to congregate on our unit. So anyway, I think that was kind of set the tempo for how I was able to move so fast through the ranks at UMC. Yeah. Part of it was good and part of it was bad because I kind of came the fix-it guy, which I didn't necessarily like. Right. Like it seemed like every year I got the worst, they would give me the worst department in the hospital. Sure. And we would turn it around the same way. Nothing special. We have a good time. And, I think I maybe fired 2 people in that whole 5-year span. Wow. Because people knew they were either on board or they weren't. Yeah. And a lot of people voted with their feet. Yeah. But the ones of us that stayed, we had fun.
You set a standard, right?
Yeah.
I like that you said that the CEO was curious about that. I mean, I've seen so many leaders not ask. like,
Right.
with curiosity about what you're doing. So I think that was a big thing to have a leader and healthcare executive just be curious, And the other thing that I thought was really cool about what you said is like, the product that you put out, you were proud of, and I think the hard work, you could see it manifesting, in results. And then you wrote down a standard. I thought that, that's a pretty cool thing, right? You actually took the time to write it down. But it reminds me, I read Quinn Studer's stuff, and his story is similar. He would just do the same thing wherever he went, from Wisconsin to Chicago, then to Pensacola, and then it turned into a system that people could follow. And then he had this dilemma, like, how do I take this thing and scale it and bring these good things to the rest of the world, right? And I think it's interesting to see, when a system's put into place, it's strong, written down, and then you can lead, that system. I mean, the results can be, extraordinary, it seems like, right? Yeah.
Well, and then my next experience is almost the polar opposite. It's really the downside to the story.
Okay.
The rise from contract nurse to assistant manager to ultimately a vice president. I was ready for the next step, which the next step would have been the chief nursing officer at a facility. And there was a glass ceiling where I was, two really good leaders in front of me that had been there since the doors had opened. And, no matter how good I was, it's not necessarily that I'm saying they would be better, but they were established and there was no reason for the organization to move in another direction.
Right.
They were solid, and I learned a ton from them.
Yeah.
But it did, make me look, and I took my first CNO job in Corpus Christi, Texas, and that was a different experience. Once again, I was CNO of a smaller branch. The organization was Christus. A lot of people are familiar with Christus, a big organization.
Oh, yeah.
And I was in the Spawn region, and Spawn had 6 hospitals at that time, and mine was sort of, I don't want to say boutique hospital, but the newer, smaller hospital on the south side of Corpus, where the town was growing, and so it was a nice facility. Anyway, that was my first, I will say every management job I've taken is kind of interesting. I've found myself in the same spot. The first time in that chair, you sit in that chair and you go, what do I do?
Yeah.
So first time as manager at the ICU and UMC in Lubbock was the same way. And the next step was the CNO sitting in that chair going, okay, now I've got all of these nurses looking to me for the plan.
Right.
And so I started off doing what I knew to do, building relationships, making friends, having fun with people, trying to attract. There was 3 or 4 management positions that were open in nursing when I got there. So I was lucky in that. I was able to bring in people that I identified with, or, I could tell had my same core values. So I'm one CNO of 6 CNOs because there's 6 hospitals. So we had a regional CNE, Chief Nursing Executive, who wound up leaving the organization. I had been there about a year, maybe less than a year. And so I got put into the interim CNE position, which was way a stretch for me.
Yeah.
But that's where I figured out I don't fit in.
Oh, really?
I got encouraged to read books like Leadership Presence and that sort of thing. I was kind of tagged as, you've got a lot of potential, but you don't really have the presence. And that was kind of hurtful.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was thinking that too.
But it did. You mentioned that you don't want to ask me questions from a place that could be considered of arrogance, but that was my first non-fit in my career. And I don't want to say anything bad about Christus or the people I was with, but there was almost an arrogance expected of a leadership position.
Sure. Yep.
And so I started reading other books.
Yeah.
Books that kind of, told me that I was doing things right by being myself. And, a lot of people think the leader needs to be out in front, and a lot of type A people get moved into, and I am big time a leader from the rear.
Me too.
And that's unusual and unsettling to some people, and that position was not a fit for me.
Yeah.
And that's really what I've kind of found out through my career is where that arrogance is expected, I don't thrive.
No, I don't either. I don't either. And I think it's interesting because, in the way you put it too, is when you have people in a room that need to talk and, show that's when I shut up, and because I don't think I'm going to contribute to that, whatever they're trying to get accomplished, and And then, unfortunately, I've too often in my career, people have maybe taken that as weakness, but the more I've learned, there's strength in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if there's depth in that is long-term depth, that at the end of the day, they want that too. Corporations want that, right?
Right.
And when it becomes real is in communities like this, where it's not a dog and pony show. It's real life,
Right.
So leadership has an impact if you do it the right way. And then like you're in a field right now where people move a lot, they stay 3 or 4 years until they're found out. And you made a joke about it earlier. I thought that's interesting because when people find out about you, they are pleasantly surprised. In my experience, when people found out about other CEOs they wanted them to leave. So you're right. There's this period of time where you have to find out who the person is, and then that shows themselves. And then are you left with something that you like at that point, right?
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So Chris, this is, you got into that role, and then
And I learned some, like I said, some great things from, that organization at the national level stood for so much, and I learned so much from that hierarchy. I just, I got caught in a little, I don't know, what do they call it, a back eddy in a river, or a little pocket that I couldn't pull out of, and it was just a little pocket of arrogance that I didn't fit in.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So it's all been helpful to help you get to this point, though, right? I mean, It's all served for.
Yeah, and many lessons that were learned beyond that. But
yeah,
you asked me the last time we talked about some of the people that have influenced me, or and I can trace it to very few people that truly have emulated. And it's interesting because it's for very, very different reasons. At the CEO that recognized my work at UMC, it was actually the guy that was under him that I most identified with, and he's the CEO now.
Oh, nice.
That's Mark Vanderberg at UMC. And Mark just had this unbelievable ability to be firm, but yet unbelievably empathetic and compassionate. So he always listened to you. I mean, it didn't matter who you were. He listened, and he listened intently, and he did everything. His first answer was always yes. He's so many places you go, the first answer is no. Yeah. He's going, let's try it. It was always encouragement in his voice. But anything that crossed the line, he was also very stern in his leadership style. Never really developed the sternness, but I really have tried to emulate his listening ability and his ability to really try to see the person behind what makes him tick. And and then, he kind of understands that the variety is good.
Yeah.
So, but you have to get to know the person to know that people are different, and that variety helps your organization. Yeah. So he was amazing. When I left Corpus Christi and came back to Lubbock, I worked for Lubbock Heart and Surgical Hospital. There was actually an interim CEO that was there, and his name was Roy Vinson. And in an interim role, it would be easy to think that the person you're working for doesn't want to dive in too deep, that they're pretty much there as a stopgap until they get the full-time person hired. And I think the organization was kind of there in a stopgap, but the person that was Roy Vinson, every single day, he got up, he came into the office, he didn't drink coffee. I still remember he would drink room temperature bottled water, and he would really crunch and I had the office next to him, so I could always hear him. But that meant he was about to go out and round, and he was going to be gone for 2 hours. And he made connections with every single person in the building every morning. Just that ability that he had to make a personal connection. But whether it was a sales company or a corporate company coming trying to buy the hospital or whatever, every meeting that we had in that little conference room, boardroom that we had in our little office, the meeting would never start until Roy had talked to each person at the table about who they were, where they had come from. He wanted to know a little bit about them before he was even really willing to engage in conversation with him.
Yeah.
And that was a 2-part strategy I learned. Number one, he got to know, but he could eat up as much of the meeting as he wanted to eat up just by holding that conversation.
Control the meeting. Yeah.
Sometimes he really controlled the meeting in such a friendly way that you didn't even know.
Right.
It was so there was a definite leadership strategy plus just the good person.
Sure.
That he was. That's what I learned from him. And then I took a consulting job in Northeast Georgia that kind of will forever stay with me because the organization was so strong. It was, I don't know if you've ever even heard of the hospital, Northeast Georgia Medical Center.
Yep.
but they're kind of in their capture area of their patients is unique in that it really only can support one hospital, and they're there. But rather than be content with that, they've become one of the best hospitals in Georgia, in that area north of Atlanta, about an hour north of Atlanta. It's up in the mountains. It's beautiful, beautiful new facility they've built. It was just a crazy good job. But I went in as a consultant for critical care, nursing. They were just, for some reason, they could not keep their nurses. It was 3 ICUs, I think, and the step-down unit, congestive heart failure unit. There's like 5 or 6 units that were under my authority there, my leadership area. But they were looking for somebody. They had been through director after director after director, and it had unchanged. Yeah. And this is a long story to get to the third guy that really impressed me in my career. Good. But it was interviewed again with them. They actually did not have a chief nursing officer at the time, but it was more important to them to fix their critical care area. The very cardiac-based hospital. It had grown up around a group of cardiologists and had expanded out from there, but their cardiologists and cardiothoracic surgeons were just amazing, amazing people. Wow. And, of course, that's where the critical care focus was. So their main product line couldn't keep nursing staff. And really all they were able to hire was graduate nurses who were lucky if they made it a year. They would just get chewed up by the system. And so interview, was I up for the challenge? It was my first time to do something where I wasn't hired into a permanent job. It was they were bringing me in as a consultant, so I was kind of excited about that, but I was scared because nobody else had been able to do it. Yeah. Kind of a daunting task. And I've had some departments underneath me before that, like I said, at UMC, I was the fixer guy. They'd bring me into the kind of the worst department. So anyway, I had a lot of confidence that I could do it, but I was also nervous because it was the first time I was kind of putting my namesake on it. Sure. And I was there, it was no more than 10 business days, and the CEO, that he was directly involved in my bringing me on. And I had never done this, had no reputation for doing this, but I guess he liked what he heard in the interview. It was an interim company that I went through, but they had put me out in front of this anyway. So I interviewed well enough that he gave me a chance to come in and fix this huge problem that he had over his major number one product line. Sure. So it was challenging, but he called me in my office. My office was a little hole in the wall. I still remember that. And he said, well, how's it going? I said, well, I think I got your problem fixed. I didn't say that. I said, I think I know what your problem is. Yeah. And he said, really? You've been here all of 10 days? I said, yep. He said, can we have lunch over it? Anyway, so I had lunch with him and we sat and talked. And his pride and joy, his stock of thoroughbred physicians and cardiothoracic surgeons, and they just gobbled up people. Yeah. I mean, they walked into the unit and it was the culture that they just started yelling. They looked through a chart, anything that, down to 1 milliliter wrong on your input of this fluid, and, you could take that as a teaching moment and kind of show a nurse what to do, but they would just yell. Yeah. And the leaders of the physician group were the worst. Yeah. And I said, I can tell you what your problem is, but I can't fix it. You're going to have to be the one to fix this. And you are never going to be able to keep a nurse in these departments if this is the culture. Yeah. So he thought about it, and he decided he was going to have a meeting with all the doctors, and he called them in, and he allowed me kind of stay in the back. And he kind of told them, he used my name, that this is what Doug has come in and seen, and we need to change it. And then they excused me from the room, and I guess they had some pretty heated dialogue. And I think he left that meeting thinking that he had convinced the doctors that they needed to change. Uh-huh. And I went to work the next morning, and he had not, because they were lined up. Oh, no. They were lined up outside my office to let me know that this was their hospital, and I needed to. So I really assumed that I'd be fired by the end of the day. Wow. And he calls me up. Well, so I had a little condominium. I made it home to my condominium. He called me on my cell phone. How did the day go? And I think I could tell by his voice, he fully expected for me to say, well, great. What did you do? Oh, my gosh. I said, it's probably the worst day of my life. Oh, no. And he goes, what? And so I kind of told him how the day went and how little there was left of my rear end. He said, well, who was the worst? And, I told him who the worst was. Yeah. And anyway, he said he wanted to see it. And I said, I can't guarantee you that you can see it. You're going to walk in and it's not going to be that way.
Right.
But
Right.
the very next morning, he was able to see it. In a nutshell, there was another meeting with the physicians, and it went a lot differently. And minds were opened that things could be different.
Mm.
And really, honestly, I think between the two of us and the pretty awesome lady in HR, we were able to put Band-Aids on the staffing. We brought in kind of like, almost like if there was a hurricane. There's some companies out there that if you need to have a group of, I think fast staff may have actually been what the company was called, where if you have an emergency, you can. So anyway, we brought in just an infusion of nurses to help us stabilize.
Yep.
And kind of had changed the doctor's attitude, and I got to talk to him one-on-one. But what the doctors really kept hearing was how great I was. And I still remember one of the cardiacs going, Doug Dippel, whoever he is.
Yeah.
And I didn't really do anything except point out the obvious.
You brought candor.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the long story, how I got to the story of the people that I emulate, it took a lot of guts for that CEO to do what he did.
Yeah.
And
I think he knew, Doug. I mean, based off the story, I feel like in his gut, he knew what you were saying was something he's probably already known.
Yeah.
But the way you deliver a kind candor can have an impact on people because they have to look inward, I think, right?
Yeah.
And then courage is going to be, that's really fight or flight at that point. What's he going to do? And once you know the right thing to do, what do you do with that,
Yeah, yeah. And what was even cooler was, so it was I got to stay almost a full year after that.
Yeah.
So getting the whole benefits of an organization that, resource-wise, I mean, we did some amazing things. They had already had an ECMO, which is kind of a heart-lung bypass machine.
Okay.
They had a program that they had wanted to implement, and it was well underway when I got there, but I was there while we implemented it. So I was learning things. And then they had an LVAD program that came in right behind that, and kind of a bridge transplant program. So many things grew off of, and I can't take credit for any of that thinking, but I can take a lot of credit in helping them build the foundation of just taking care of people and being nice to each other.
Right, yeah.
That allowed those programs to just launch and explode, and I got to train the person that I was contract, so I got to train the full-time person, and she was totally amazing. I learned,
nice.
It was just an all-around good experience.
Succession planning.
That helped shape me.
Yeah.
So
that's great, Doug. It's a great story.
Yeah.
I mean, it does, for me, it helps me. I've known you for a long time, but, when you give the details like that, it's, it's part of your foundation of getting you to this point now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did you become the CEO here after Georgia, or was there a stop?
I actually went to Alaska for the next contract job after that. Completely different story. This big, huge hospital in Georgia, and I went to a critical access hospital in Seward, Alaska that had 2 beds in the hospital. They were the ER beds and the admission beds. And they were, so, and a whole nother taste of, it was, they were a community, and I was way an outsider in that community, but I was able to bring some things that, I don't want to say I wasn't there really long enough. I can't say that I made this huge difference like I did in Georgia or like I did at UMC, but I'm just able to bring some efficiencies to an operation that, where they're standing around, could we be doing this? Or we've got this room back here that's really just full of a bunch of stuff that needs to go in the trash can, and we could turn that room into a place that we could triage patients and it's just so many unique things. It was a sleepy little hospital, except when the cruise ship came in. And you put 4,000 people getting off a boat at the same time, your hospital is going to get used.
Sure.
So, it was a whole different way of thinking about things, and how can we, with this little bitty tiny staff, be able to, if we're designed to have 2 and we have 10, that's overrun.
Oh, yeah.
So it gave me a whole new perspective on what a critical access hospital was and what it could be. And then in Alaska, you had to fly over a mountain to get to Anchorage in a helicopter. And there's a lot of days you couldn't do that. So you had to be really creative. So, that experience helped me. But I was in Alaska when the chief nursing officer at this hospital came available, my LinkedIn dinged, and I looked at it, and wow, Rolling Plains.
Wow.
And I knew Donna, knew the CEO.
Yeah.
She was my director of nursing when I was working in the ER here.
Yeah.
And so we had a pretty good relationship. We kind of loosely kept in touch, but I had her phone number, so I texted her, would you consider me for this role?
Yeah.
And I had applied for it about 10 years ago, and she had offered it to me. But at the time, financially, it would have been way too big of a step down for, I was a new dad and things like that. And she made me the best offer that she could. But anyway, her text back to me was kind of, I couldn't afford you then. What makes you think I can afford you now?
Yeah,
and I said, well, things have changed. And I knew her, and I had talked to her on more than one occasion of the potential of succeeding her into the CEO role, and it just everything kind of worked out. So this is, as much as I gain a whole lot of my identity and my leadership from being a nurse and compassionate and taking care of people, and you're not a good nurse if you're not those things. But had risen up through nursing leadership, but really always kind of had a secret ache to be the one making the final decisions. And this has given me that opportunity.
You want that. You want
I've always wanted it. It's definitely harder than I thought it was going to be. But it also gives you, if these are the things that made me successful in the past, and I want to try to shape a whole hospital around the things that I've seen work, even though the hardest part is nobody else has seen what I've seen. A lot of the people here grew up in Sweetwater, and they've worked at this, we have so many 30-year employees, 35-year employees, to bring a vision that's different. And I'm a very different leader than Donna was. As much as I respected her, our styles are very different. And it sort of made me condense it into what is Doug? What kind of leader? And so you kind of put all your dollars in the basket of who you define what your leadership is, in this role. What is it that's going to, it's always been a good hospital. How do you make it a great hospital? The community is glad to have this hospital, to some extent proud to have this hospital, but how do you make it where this hospital is a shining star of the community? That what sets you apart, and you kind of have to define that. And for me, it's too much of a buzzword that I almost hate it, but engagement has become what I'm going to build myself on. How I feel I'm going to separate myself, and hopefully that integrates into the fiber and the culture of the organization. But had my challenges. I took the job. We were 6 months into COVID. So didn't really get to show who I'm about. I was, the mask and gloves guy.
You had to go to
this
work.
is what we need to make it through the day. That's really what COVID was. I was very proud of how we performed during COVID. And I think that, I was proud of, I had a great team around me, but I was the one leading the conversation. This is what we need to do today. This is what, and, for a small rural hospital, I think a lot of hospitals they couldn't be a shell, but they had to be protective of we can't get overrun. And we had a little bit different approach here, and it came off of me of we are going to do everything that we can to be a solution for this pandemic. And it wasn't that I don't want to create a dangerous situation, but we took patients from Oklahoma. We took patients from Weatherford, which should have gone to Dallas. We took a lot of patients from Hendricks, the tertiary facility that we send our patients to. They would get overrun and send us patients. So we pushed our census beyond the max. With our COVID money, we have a 6-bed ICU, and we had 2 ventilators, and only one of them really worked. And by the time COVID was over, there was a day that we had 7 people on vents. We borrowed, we bought, So that was really organizing chaos was my leadership at that point. And, it's only been really the last year that I said, okay, now what were you going to do again before this thing hit?
Get back to work.
Trying to get back and rebuild it. And it's been different because it was, I would say that it was pretty much authoritarian type environment here. And once that is, I respect my predecessor. I've learned so much from her, but that's where our styles very much deviated.
Sure.
And, I give a speech at orientation, I would say every week or every month, but we don't hire weekly or monthly.
Sure.
As we hire people, I lead off the orientation day with the message from the CEO, and engagement is all I talk about. I give a brief history of myself, and then I tell them that, that I'm either going to succeed or fail by my ability to get you to engage in what we're trying to do. And I kind of talk about it. And it's, so far, I guess I've done 30 or so orientations, and I've gotten the exact same answer every time. As I'm kind of done with my speech, I said, okay, now can I ask you to be engaged? And somebody raises their hand and says, yes, yes. And I say, no, I can't. I said, I cannot ask you to be engaged. You can only be engaged to the extent that you trust me and know that I would care for you and know I want what's best for you. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where the relationship begins, and that's what I'm trying to build in the leadership team of this hospital. And it's really everything that I do, I'm going to succeed or fail by my ability, or our ability, to engage our employees. And I was talking to you before we started the interview of some of the things that have happened recently. I'm just now, 3 years into it, I feel like I'm just now starting to, it's more of a feeling. We were accredited by DNV, and it's an annual survey. We had that survey a few months ago. And for the first time, the surveyors, just unsolicited by me or anyone, but they kept using the word culture and engagement, and your staff is so transparent and so friendly. Nice. And, it's hard to sit there and take credit for, Shannon's my manager on Med-Surg, and I didn't teach all of those employees to be that way, but, Carrie Halford became my CNO because me and her kind of identified, and she's her own person. She's definitely not me, but that's the one piece I think she emulates when she hired Shannon. So it's starting to infiltrate throughout the organization that we're going to take care of our people, and down to the little things. I mean, we had the conversation about the coffee bar.
Oh, I love that conversation. Yeah.
So I had my director of case management. I think her title is utilization review. So she does a lot of utilization review, but she's also over case management. But she came to me, and her mom had been in the hospital somewhere in the Metroplex, I think, or a bigger hospital. And she said, the one thing that impressed me about the hospital was they had the space where I was able to get away from the pressures and the sadness of what was going on with her loved one, and have a cup of coffee and sit down. Mm-hmm. She said, we should do something like that here.
Yeah.
I didn't act on it immediately, which is my fault. Sorry, Vicki. But I did get around to it. Yeah. And Carla, my assistant, is really good at attention to detail and making things nice and pretty. And I asked her, I said, can you put this together for me? And I'll show it to you before you leave. Yeah. But it's just this little nook. Has a plumbed Keurig machine. I mean, the water is fed into the machine. You don't have to add the water to it. Mm-hmm. And we buy nice K-Pod coffee. Yeah. And it was all Vicki's idea, and we made it happen. But I think the element that I got to add me to it was, everybody said, that coffee's expensive. The nurses are going to drink it all. Yeah. And I said, I hope they drink every.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That was how I answered. I said, I'll pay for it out of my pocket. Yeah. The coffee is the cheapest investment we could make in a little thing that, and I don't know that nurses have said, this is the greatest idea ever, or anything like that, but it creates an environment where this is for the patient, it's not for the nurses. Sure. It's for the patients. Yeah. But please. Yeah. Have a cup of coffee. Yeah. And I don't,
it's a happy accident.
Well, yeah, but it was Vicki's idea. Yeah. And we, I put a little bit of my spin on it. Carla is the person, attention to detail, and she takes a lot of pride in the compliments she gets off the coffee bar. Yeah. And then, we participate in the National Daisy Award, and it was just kind of interesting. We have a nurse that commutes in from about 30, 40 miles away. She could work at a bigger hospital closer to where she lives, but she works here, and she won the Daisy Award by being an awesome nurse. And she gave a little, not a speech, but she just said, I feel like y'all are giving me this award, and I feel like I'm the lucky one. I mean, I've worked at a lot of places, and I love it here. Yeah. And I'm, hearing that from, from this nurse in that unit that Shannon oversees, that Carrie oversees Shannon,
Yeah.
and part of what makes that unit nice is the coffee,
Yeah.
I mean, all of those little things come together to create that environment that's what I'm trying to do. And it's still not completely accepted, but it's just starting to take hold. And that's, I guess, when the surveyor, someone from the outside comes in and says culture and engagement and transparency and your staff is so nice, it's always been a good place. But anyway, that's what I feel like I bring to leadership.
That's what I think. I was going to ask the next question. I think it's appropriate. Is what do you think the potential is for this place? Where are you hoping that this engagement can take you? I think pride in the community is one thing you mentioned already, but what do you want from this?
Yeah, it's probably been in the last 6 months. I've asked people this a lot because this is where I feel I am. One of the first departments, really troubled departments at UMC early in my career that they gave me was the emergency room. Mm-hmm. And it was, employee satisfaction scores in the basement, customer satisfaction scores in the basement. The ER was not a nice place. Yeah. Just, I don't think anybody would disagree. Sure, I don't want to trash another place, but I don't think anybody would disagree with me with that. But I felt like I was making a difference and hiring the right people, and a lot of people voted with their feet. And we were stern on some things, but really trying to take care of our good people that were engaged and had the, so I didn't even know that's what I was doing.
Right.
But that's what I was doing. Yeah. And, some of I don't know if it's a saying or whatever, but the meanest snakes out of a burning brush pile come out last. So as the unit was getting there, the meanest snakes come out last. And so the meanest snakes went to the doctors, went to the administration, and anybody that had a say in what I was doing was not getting a good report. And I still, the guy I told you that I really emulated, I mean, he had to make a decision at one certain point of, do I stick with this guy or not? Right. And I was like, Mark, let me get over this hump. Right. We are almost there, and then you're going to see the rewards. Yeah. And he took the chance, or he saw the potential in me, and he gave me the chance to follow through with it. Yeah. And I actually got promoted before it was done, but the guy behind me was already ready to finish the job, and he reported to me. So we turned it into a great place. And I'll give the guy that came behind me but anyway, I guess that's kind of where I felt I am with Rolling Plains. Yeah. Is we've done all the right things and we're there. Yeah. And the sad part about it is the reimbursement isn't. Yeah. So the people are happy. We're hiring the right people. The patients are loving it. The community's seeing it. Yeah. We're engaged in the community, and the reimbursement's not there. But I've watched people that have built it in other places, and if you're doing everything else right, the reimbursement will come. Yep. And I feel like we're just right there. We're a couple doctors short or a couple nurses short of over that hump. And so, that's great. Come talk to me in a year.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, because you're not dodging the realities of where where you are. It's just, but if anybody watching from the outside looks at this, it's like this place is prime to take a step, and the finances will come, but you don't have to work through all the deep layers to get to this point. A lot of that hard work's already been done. So, it's going to be a couple of right scenarios, and it pops.
So, it's that part of it has become kind of easy. I see that I have way too many people out there that can't get a PCP, and my doctors can't take any more patients, and so recruiting is a huge issue. Sure. And we hired our first part-time family medicine doc, and I mean, not even 2 weeks into it, her schedule's full. She's only here 2 days a week, and that's unconventional for this hospital to hire somebody for 2 days a week. But do I want to have 30 more patients seeing a doctor today rather than wait for the full-time doctor? And I've got we involved in a residency program with Texas Tech. So had our first resident that signed a contract, and she's waiting for her license to come in, and she'll be full-time. So that's going to be 90 more patients that can see. So, but it's like, do we run out of money before we get there?
Yeah.
So anyways, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, we're a county hospital, and
Yeah.
we get a lot of our money from taxpayer money.
Sure.
But that's the goal, is that we turn that corner, and that we have people driving from a long ways away to come to this hospital, and we can reduce what we're taking on
Sure.
taxes. And so when you ask the question, I think it's almost there, and this is my first shot at it as, kind of the guy. This is my baby. I'm building it off of engagement. I'm not building it off of, executive presence.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm the guy from behind.
Yep.
And
Yep.
not everyone's bought in, but a lot of people are. And
Yeah. Yep.
so if I get over that corner, we'll do a follow-up to this
Yeah.
in a year or so.
Oh, I know. That'll be fun. No, I know the communities like that I've been out and I've done a lot of these, right? They at some point are just happy to have, their hospital,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it means a lot to the communities. And some people don't know how bad the struggle is or how hard it's going to be to make that financial outcome, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been to a number of communities that have lost their hospitals, right? And so they'd give anything to have happy staff when they showed up,
Mm-hmm.
and doctors to see, and something that could save their lives, just in their community. And you've got all those things, already set in motion here. So I think, as the community gets to know what you're doing, and they start to understand that, yeah, that's what Doug means by engagement. When I had my experience with them as a patient, this is what it was,
Mm-hmm.
and then the nurses and the people who are, and everybody who's in the mix, the lab technicians and the radiologists and the technologists and all those folks that work with the patients, right? It's like when they see it, that is an outcome. It doesn't have to be a financial outcome. That's an outcome that you were striving for when you, set off on this, journey.
And we're getting all those outcomes. The feedback is great.
Yeah.
The awards are coming.
Yeah.
3 years ago, Becker's top 100 hospitals.
Yeah.
The quality measures are there. The patient satisfaction result. All the things that feed into those awards are there. And we just got named by CMS as a birth-friendly, and our OB floor, obstetrics floor.
Yeah.
Very few hospitals this size are able to deliver
Absolutely.
babies, and
Yep.
it's not a moneymaker, but it's something that really ties us to the community.
Yeah.
And once again, the CNO that replaced me hired this director, Sarah Reynolds, who's knocking it out of the park in OB, and we think the numbers are starting to show. Maybe a little bit early to tell, but the feel when you walk back there is, and I think we're building something that the community is going to be proud of.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite thing to say is, one of my old bosses used to say it to me is, proceed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good one.
So
That's really good. Is there anything that the community could do for the hospital? Like any tangible action that they could take if anybody wanted to, help out in any way? Is there anything they could do?
yes and no. Yes, it's all in the stories. You're asking me for my story. You know it's all in the stories.
Yeah.
So telling the stories, the community telling the stories when they have that experience, that's why what you're doing is so intriguing to me is, how does it help me replicate faster what we're already doing?
Yeah.
But another story. So we have an old swimming pool. This is just like started last Thursday, and here we are on Tuesday.
It's fresh,
so 4 or 5 days, this has all gone down. We have a pool. There's a group of ladies that like to do water aerobics in the pool faithfully, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week. They're a group. The only thing that makes their group not be very viable is our pool keeps going in and out, the heater, something.
Sure.
And then we kind of got the huge blow, which was our dehumidifier went out, which indoor pool at 90 degrees.
Yeah.
And so the one we had was undersized, and it was only 3 or 4 years old, and it cost $75,000. So what is it going to take to really do the job right? And the director of that department was telling me how expensive it was going to be. He hadn't really even got the numbers yet. He was just like, I hate to give you this bad news, Doug. And so, I'm saying, well, number one, get the numbers. Let's see what it's going to take to get the pool fixed.
Yep.
Number two, what are our options? Is there a way we can suck the humidity out the ceiling? I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's my job to ask
Yeah.
those questions.
Yep.
And worst case scenario, what if the pool is not viable? What, what can we do with that space?
Yeah.
So guess what got back to the ladies who used the
my
pool?
gosh, the last one.
The last one.
Yeah.
And it was a great process for me, and it was a great process for those ladies because they got to know a little bit about me, and I got to know how passionate they were about the pool.
Yeah.
And it wasn't my intent
Yeah.
to get rid of the pool, but so what can the community do for the hospital? That's a group that maybe I can tap into through our foundation to tell a story.
Yeah.
Maybe we make the money to save the pool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so that whole engagement piece, it isn't just with hospitals or nurses or your admission staff. This is a group of ladies who use the pool.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm hoping I sparked something and
Sure.
sparked a bit of engagement. So what can the community do?
Yeah.
And not just be proud of having a hospital, but get engaged.
Yeah.
There has never been a tour I've given of this hospital that people aren't amazed at all the things we do at a small rural hospital.
Right.
I mean, we have an MRI machine. We have 40 ultrasound for looking everything from babies' noses to amazing mammography capability.
Yeah.
And, it's what we do here. People have no idea. So I need to get that out there through channels like this, hopefully.
Yeah.
But then what can the community do?
Engage.
Not just be proud, but engage in your hospital. I mean, we have a great board, by the way, which is an extension of the
that's awesome.
the community.
Such a big deal.
Yeah.
It really is.
So
yeah, I think the cool part is like engagement just easily transferred from the hospital staff to the community. It's the same philosophy, right? And what I hear from you is that, and I've known this about you for years, that you'll engage with anybody that is willing to, walk in and have a conversation with you. And the outcome is going to be a kind, pleasant experience where you both learn from each other. And then, you're interested, you're curious. And I think that, the last thing that I think about when I think about you, I mean, and I'm a friend, so I'm biased, but is he's going to shut you down and not talk to you and not engage with you. It's the last thing that's going to happen. The likely thing that's going to happen is you're going to walk out of there feeling like, that could be a friend of mine, and you're going to listen to him. And then even if you can't do something right away, you're not going to let it go. You think about, I mean, you're one of those guys that you'll bring something up that we talked about, years ago, and you haven't let it go. You just don't let it go because you're considerate of the person sitting across from you. That's what I would encourage. And I would be proud to tell stories because like you said, even the ultrasound thing that you said, like there's a story there.
Yeah.
But why is that important? Like, what does it mean to the community, the hospital, to the patient, to the staff that uses it? Like there's all these different things that if people just knew, then they could engage.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's where we are. I mean,
that's great.
We're building it. It was good already. We're building it and improving it from within.
Yeah.
And now it's getting the stories out.
I'm telling you. Yeah. This is an American story, like rural hospitals in America, right? They all have something unique happening, but there are some underlying fundamental things that are happening, which is we're all trying to salvage financially, and make this a financially viable situation for a community. That's the biggest challenge that every CEO I talk to faces, right? And then number two is typically staff and, satisfaction of the staff. And it's funny to see how those two things are correlated through these conversations that we have with CEOs across the country.
Right.
And I don't think this is any different. You have your unique situation, but financial, staff satisfaction, they're top of mind all the time, So, yeah, I think this is a great story. We'll do more of these hopefully and get some context to some of these things that you brought up. But thank you, Doug.
Good deal.
Yeah, good talking to you. Hey, this is your host, Danny Mobley. Thanks for watching Humans of Healthcare. Please subscribe below for more great interviews.